everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. My name is Kelton Howell.
And I'm Spencer Simpson. In our last episode, we mentioned something about decks being mechanically thematic versus flavorfully thematic. And we've been marinating on that a little bit this week and been chatting about it. And I think we want to reevaluate the vernacular there a little bit. It's been especially relevant thinking about it as we've been brewing new decks or reevaluating our old decks in terms of the bracket system. And it's been helpful to help us classify them, but I think we were a little bit off on how we named them. So we talked about mechanically thematic versus flavorfully thematic. That is hard to say.
I know, I said that before the episode. I was like, I am for sure going to stumble on that.
Yeah. So mechanically thematic, we want to equate with synergy. And flavorfully thematic, we want to equate with theme/flavor. So as an example, can we talk about Garth as an example? Because this is the one we were talking about as we were talking about this.
Yeah. Do you want me to read Garth really quick?
Yeah, let's read Garth.
Garth is a 5-mana Wooburg commander for a 5/5 legendary creature human wizard. It has the ability tap. That is the full cost of the ability. And the ability says, choose a card name that hasn't been chosen from among Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Shivan Dragon, Regrowth, and Black Lotus. Create a copy of the card with the chosen name. You may cast the copy.
Yes.
You still pay its mana cost.
You still pay its mana cost. Yep, which is super relevant for the Black Lotus, which is the one that you're going to be doing the most. But so I have a Garth deck, which I'm sure everyone knows now because I've talked about it ad nauseum. And we're going to pull
which
up
I don't
ad
think you run in the,
right there.
in the deck.
No, I don't. Yeah, exactly. Can we pull that card up as I? No, we've talked about it a ton, and I've really worked on trying to get it to a point where I feel like I can sit down, not at any table, but just at the average table and play Garth. Because before it was a very high power deck, and then I tried to power it down, and it was a little too low. And I feel like I've landed somewhere in the middle. But I was trying to think if there was like actually themes that I built around in Garth, and my original thought was that the theme is tapping and untapping. I have a lot of creatures with tap abilities. I have a lot of untappers.
Sure.
And Garth cares about being untapped.
If you were to go to EDH Rec and like look at like the theme, there's a tab called themes, and like that's like a theme, right? Isn't like untap? Yeah, untap decks. That's a theme for EDH Rec.
Yeah, and so like to me that is one of the themes of Garth, but I'm starting to question whether or not that actually can be considered a theme or is more a synergy in the deck. And I don't know that they're mutually exclusive, but it's hard. It's hard to like delineate a little bit. And so I'm leaning on it. I'm leaning towards it being more of a synergy, though I do think it's still somewhat thematic. And I think mostly the parts that are of a synergy is the untap portion, including untappers in the deck is just a huge synergy with Garth. Because I get to tap Garth for a Black Lotus, untap, and then tap him for any of the 2-mana spells that Black Lotus can cast, or a Brain Geyser or something that I can pay for later.
And knowing that you have a lot of untappers in that deck, haven't you added other like really good tap abilities in the deck as well to take advantage of that?
Yeah. So it runs like Bloom Tender and Feybarrow Elder to make tons of mana off of the untapping once I have Garth out. But also I'm running a bunch of untappers that aren't necessarily like prime, or not untappers, tap abilities that aren't necessarily like prime tap abilities. Like the deck runs Glarb. I run Glarb in the deck, and he's in there because he's a wizard, and that is one of the themes I wanted in the deck. And he can tap to surveil, and you can cast stuff off the top. So he has some like ancillary benefit, but the deck isn't built to leverage Glarb. Outside of being able to surveil additional and see additional cards, I suppose. So I think the way I would maybe consider it is that the synergy is the untappers, but the theme is other tap abilities. Potentially.
Okay.
Because none of those tap abilities synergize with the commander in any way, and I don't know that it necessarily, for something to be a theme or a synergy, it has to synergize with the commander. But your commander is the card you have access to at all times, right?
Sure.
And so
and
ideally,
people tend
most
to build
things
around their commanders.
100%. Ideally, most things are synergizing with your commander.
Yeah.
In a deck.
So some of the themes, I know you have other themes or like flavors.
Yeah.
Flavorful themes. in Garth, like I know that you, like you mentioned, include a lot of wizards like Glarb. And I know that you also wanted the deck to feel like Garth was like this like wizard that had collected the most powerful spells across the multiverse. So you included at least one 3-color pip spell for each color.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted it to be very thematic around Garth, and who Garth is like this wandering mage character. And so like this old sage or whatever. I'm gonna read. Can I read his flavor text?
Oh yeah,
because I think this is like his flavor text is a humble appearance belies a master's skill, which I think is like cool. So sick. And so I kind of wanted to embody that flavor text with the list. Yeah. And so it includes a bunch of wizards that like he's become friends with or whatever in his travels, and then the tap abilities isn't as relevant to the flavor, I suppose, on that front. And then the big three mana pip spells
cool.
that of monocolor pips, right? So red, green, blue, and that's like part of the reason he has Black Lotus as a castable ability, right? Is to be able to. So I think cool. That's one of the themes I decided on that. But it was really hard to like actually sit down, and building Garth that way required me sitting down and saying, what do I want the themes to be in this deck? To make some conscious excludes of certain cards and includes of others. And then also, but even afterwards, it was hard to be like, okay, because sitting down to build the deck, I was like, yeah, I want tapping to be a theme. Like, I want tapping to be a theme.
Sure.
And so I do feel like they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. We're like, sure, tapping is a synergy because I'm including untappers for Garth, and some of the tap abilities are just incredibly busted. But I think the tap abilities can be considered a theme potentially.
Yeah. Well, I liked the way that you thought about it, because I know that you were trying to create a lower power version of Garth. And so by forcing yourself to like think about the theme instead of just the synergies, like inherently that gave you a place to make decisions that weren't purely power based, right? Because if all you were thinking about was like, oh man, like what synergizes well with Garth, I mean, the more synergistic your deck is, it's just going to trend towards higher power level because it's going to perform more efficiently and effectively, right? So by moving your deck building focus away from exclusively synergy and trying to think about flavor or theme more, it lets you make decisions that were less power based. And so I think that probably helped you get it to a lower power level where you feel a little more comfortable playing it in more pods.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I struggle with that with a lot of decks. I like Garth a lot conceptually. I mean, both conceptually, mechanically, and also as like the flavor of Garth. And so it was easier for me to say, like, what do I want this Garth deck to be? But it is tough with other decks, I think, to...
Yeah, because like not every deck has to be flavorful or thematic. No. Like I just finished putting together my Pier and Toothy lists. I'll read them. It's 2 cards, so I apologize for a little extra reading here. But I just typed in Pier Toothy, and that's not actually a card.
I'll read Toothy if you want to read Pier too.
Okay, yeah, I'll read Pier, and of course I type in Pier without anything else. There's like 3,000 cards with those 3 letters in it. So Pure Imaginative Rascal is 2 and a green for a 1/1 legendary creature human that partners with Toothy Imaginary Friend. If one or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, that many plus 1 of each of those kinds of counters are put on that permanent instead. And then will you read Toothy?
Yes, I love the Your Team, by the way. That is like...
Yeah, because it was from Battle Bond. It was so cool.
So Battle Bond throwback, and I love it. Toothy Imaginary Friend is 3 and a blue for a 1/1 legendary creature illusion. It is partnered with Pure Imaginative Rascal. And for those who don't know partner with, they're commanders in this context, so it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But if they're included in your 99, when one enters, you can search your library for the other.
Yeah, you actually get to target a player and they get to search their library.
Whoa! Yeah, Battle Bond again. But you could also be like, opponent, do you have a Toothy in your deck? Go get it. Or I guess this one.
Yeah, but since it's a May ability, you could actually, like, if you knew someone needed to shuffle, you could actually target them and they may search and just fail to find and then just shuffle their library.
Whoa. And so
there's like some collusion.
Whoa. And when they're in the command zone, you can just do that.
Sure. Yeah.
That's crazy. Can you target yourself too when they're in the command zone, fail to find, and then shuffle?
Probably.
So did your deck run Sylvan Library?
Wait, it does. I've never thought about that. How did I miss that? That's so
crazy.
good.
Well, because you run Brainstorm too, right? Because of
do
what
run
Toothy does.
Brainstorm.
Okay, well, we're going to read what Toothy does, but you're running Brainstorm, so that's a pretty sick.
That's a cool combo.
That's pretty tight.
Okay, wait, and it's when it just enters. It's not even when you cast it.
Yeah,
so it's like
yeah.
we'll get to why.
We'll
that's
get to
important here in a
what your
minute.
deck is doing. Yeah. So Toothy Imaginary Friend, 3 and a blue, 1/1 Legendary Creature Illusion. Whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Toothy Imaginary Friend, and whenever Toothy leaves the battlefield, which is so stupid by the way, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it.
Yes, this is a blink deck.
Yeah.
so you draw a bunch of cards, and then you blink Toothy, and when Toothy re-enters, it enters before all of the leave the battlefield triggers resolves. So you draw the cards after Toothy's already re-entered, and so it sees that card draw, and you put the counters back on Toothy. So basically, you're just trying to make a huge Toothy and just blink it to draw cards and make a really big Toothy. So the reason that's really cool with the partner with ability is that if it does work that way, which I'm gonna have to read the rules text for Toothy. Whenever I blink it, it gives me an opportunity to shuffle my deck, which is actually so cool. Wow.
That's crazy.
I can't believe I missed that.
So the ruling says here the triggered ability of the partner with keyword still triggers in a commander game. If your other commander has somehow ended up in your library, you can find it. You can also target another player who might have that card in the library, which to me means you can target yourself, shuffle, fail to
I
find.
think that's true. I'll have to. Someone has surely asked this question on Reddit. I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. That's sweet. Well, anyways, it's a blink deck. There is nothing thematic in my deck list. I don't think, because I don't know what the flavor of this would be. Like, I guess the flavorful version of Peer and Toothy would be like imaginary friends, like playing a bunch of illusions.
Yeah, I think okay.
I
So
guess that's probably the flavorful version, but that has nothing to do with it, like mechanically, like synergistically.
I think theme is kind of an overloaded term in Commander because I think if you put this deck on EDH Rec, it would, AI or whatever, I don't know how they're doing it, but they said, what is the theme of this deck? It would say Blink, right?
Probably.
But I think ultimately the way we use theme pretty regularly is strategy, is synonymous with strategy, right?
I think that's true.
And so the strategy of the deck is Blink. A bunch of things synergize with Blink, but there's no like flavorful theme to speak of with the deck necessarily.
Yeah.
Unless you were to play like illusions or something, or
because the things that Peer and Toothy care about are counters, drawing cards, and like not written on the card, but it's very good with blinking.
Yeah.
And it's like there's nothing about those things that are thematic. So like you would have to pull any like flavor or theme from the rest of the card, which is like the name of the card, the creature type, like the art, right? And so like you're kind of stretching to make it a little bit more flavorful.
yeah, absolutely. Like you could build a deck like things with teeth or whatever. So it's a bunch of different things that are toothy or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's. I think. Yeah, I inevitably you have some commanders where you have a hard time landing on flavor. But the thing is you don't have to. You can play those decks against decks that are flavorful. Like I think Garth could definitely go toe-to-toe with Peer and Toothy.
I mean, and I know that it's a little stronger. I built it to be stronger. I built it as a bracket 3 deck, and that's just what I want for that deck.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, when we've talked about this before, we've talked about this a little bit. At least the concept of lower power decks tend to prioritize flavor a little bit more, and higher decks tend to prioritize strategy a little bit more. But the problem is that has caused me too, but I think can cause anyone to develop a paradigm where they think of it as a spectrum, where you have flavor on one side and synergy on the other. And I don't think that's true. Because again, they're not mutually exclusive, right? You can have something that's incredibly flavorful, but also very, very synergistic. And so it's really two independent scales of flavor and synergy. And I think the best example for that is typal decks, right?
Yeah, because I'm sure, I don't remember if it was the episode that we were talking about flavor and synergy, but we've talked about Wilhelt multiple times on the channel. And if you think about both of those scales, like if they were two independent scales, if you think about flavor, Wilhelt is an extremely flavorful deck. It runs all zombies, and it's
Yeah.
doing all the zombie stuff, and all the art usually has zombies on it. But then if you look at the synergy scale, it's also very high because zombies synergize extremely well together. So typal decks, a lot of times, the synergies are just super powerful. So it's going to be more powerful even if it's super flavorful.
Yeah, because I mean, we talked about Will Health a lot, and we talked about specific cards, even like Kindred Discovery, which is inherently a typal deck card, right?
That's flavorful.
But also synergizes incredibly well. Or like Rooftop Storm, which like where are you playing that except for in a zombie deck that plays blue?
It's only good in a zombie deck.
Yeah, but if you get out Rooftop Storm, you just are casting all your zombies for free, and that's crazy. And you can't. That's not a synergy that you get anywhere else, like unless you play like Omniscience or something, right? And so. Yeah. It is. I think this was the train that led us to. We need to not think about it as a single spectrum, right? Because typal decks felt like the exception, and they are mostly the exception. But there are other exceptions as well, where you can build a deck and try to build it around some theme, but it's still incredibly powerful.
So I know that you just are wrapping up an exercise where you built 5 monocolored commander decks that are meant to be played like as like starter decks in a pod. And you decided that each color was going to be a typal deck. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but white was soldiers, blue was wizards, green was elves, red was goblins, and black was zombies. Was I right?
Yes, white is humans.
White is humans, not soldiers.
Humans.
Well, there's a lot of human soldiers.
There are a lot of human soldiers. Yeah, it's virtually soldiers, but the problem is there's also a lot of knights and stuff too, so I just made it humans.
Made it humans. Very cool. But did you find it hard trying to build low power starter decks that were typal decks? Like, because it feels like I think they're just naturally very powerful, right?
Yeah, it was a little tough. I think what the nature of them being beginner decks and trying to avoid more complex mechanics helped immensely with that because I was leaning more towards virtually vanilla creatures, right? Like lords, obviously, but like none of the stuff that's like incredibly busted in those colors, while still trying to showcase what those colors.
That's cool. That sounds like honestly a pretty unique challenge. It sounds difficult.
Yeah, I'm excited to test them out. I think it's okay. So the commanders for each of them, we could talk. Can we talk about this for a second?
Let's talk about them. Yeah.
So the commanders for each of them.
We'll read them all.
Yeah, so we're doing for the white decks. It's Adeline, Resplendent Cathar. I'll read Adeline.
Okay, I'll queue up the next one.
The blue deck is Azami, which I think you know. Okay, yeah, Adeline, Resplendent Cathar is 1 white for a legendary creature, human knight. See, it's a knight, so I couldn't do soldiers. I needed it to be, and it makes It's a star for legendary creature, human knight. Star, we'll see what its power is in a second. It has vigilance, and it says Adeline's power is equal to the number of creatures you control. So Adeline's star is true in any zone, unless this creature loses all abilities, we learned the other day.
Yeah, we did learn that the other day.
And then Adeline says, whenever you attack, for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. So it's just making tokens, and white has a lot of things that buff tokens, that give tokens +1/+1. Like I think Intangible Virtue is one of them. Yep. And so this is some of the other decks are also token decks because they're typal decks and you're making a lot of creatures. But I wanted white to do that the best and make them really big too. And so
that's fun.
It's showcasing tokens, vigilance. I think it plays. I can check. I think it plays. Does it play like the can't cast spells on your turn stuff? I don't think it does.
Really? Does it? That's cool. Like some of the...
Yeah, it plays Myrel.
Sure. Yeah.
Myrel technically doesn't make humans. Myrel makes soldiers, but it's still kind of go wide token stuff. Yeah. And a lot of the lords I included were not buffing humans specifically. They're buffing white creatures too.
Oh, cool.
So so trying to be like an anthem deck kind of. But it was let's read the next one. Let's read the next one really quick.
The blue one is Azami, Lady of Scrolls, 2 blue for a 0/2 legendary creature, human wizard. With the ability tap an untapped wizard you control, draw a card.
So this one was one that I was really worried about. We don't need to dive into this too much.
Because it's strong.
It is tough. Yeah, it's strong.
Yeah.
And so naturally, the typal synergies of being able to tap any wizard you cast and draw a card is pretty insane, regardless of whether it's summoning stick or not, because you have a zombie out presumably, and you're in blue, so you can play counterspells. So I really had to temper the counterspells and also play a lot of just like vanilla or bad wizards. Like a lot of them are wizards that grow when you draw cards, or not. I guess ultimately I had to end up playing not the best in class for all of the different creature types.
Sure.
And the same's true for all the other ones. So without getting too far into it, yes, it was difficult, and I don't think I nailed it, but I'm hoping it's like close, and it was aided by the fact that I'm intentionally making them very simple for people to learn Magic mechanics.
Because you do want it to be, you don't want it to be super synergistic, but you do want it to showcase the mechanics of each color.
Yeah, and also showcase synergy to some degree too. To be like, look, the black one, is Zur. Zul Asher, thank you, not Zur. Zul Asher, Lich Lord, 1 and a black for a 2/2 zombie warlock. With ward, pay 2 life, and tap, you may cast target zombie creature card from graveyard this turn. You're just recurring zombies. How more thematic could you get? So, it just trying to showcase those things. I guess we may as well read the other two, but we can probably move on.
We got Krenko Mob Boss, right?
For
the red one. 2 red for a 3/3 legendary creature goblin warrior with the activated ability to tap, create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens where X is the number of goblins you control.
And then Marwyn the Nurturer is the green one, which is 2 and a green for a 1/1. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn, and then add an amount of green equal to Marwyn's power. So, avoiding any types of infinite combos with this one.
Sure.
Anyways, all that to say, typal synergies are both very flavorful and very synergistic, and are probably the hardest decks to try and power down without imposing some other sort of flavor or restriction on the list, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's tough.
So there are just some incredibly busted commanders that are going to be hard to play at lower power, like some typal ones. And so some other examples would be like Yuriko. Like you could build Yuriko with no ninjas.
Right.
Like, why would you do that? I actually totally forgot, because I don't play against Yuriko very often. We played this week, and someone played a Yuriko deck, and I thought it was only when Yuriko deals combat damage. I didn't know it was every time a ninja dealt combat damage. And I was like, oh my gosh, I understand why this spirals out of control so quickly. So it's like, I mean, it's a ninja deck, so why wouldn't you put the ninjas in it? That's what makes it both flavorful and synergistic.
Yeah, that's the problem, is like playing typal decks, they feel so flavorful, including all these different creatures, all the same creature type. And then especially with commanders that are especially powerful,
broken in half.
Then broken in half. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think the same's also true for, like, we were talking about Blink, right, being a theme of the deck. I think the same is also true for stuff like treasures, like treasure, like blinking is pretty powerful, right? Treasures are potentially the most powerful thing to have ever existed in Magic or to be doing. And so if you play something like Korvold and you're like, oh, the theme is treasures, great. But Korvold's going to be like absolutely nasty, right?
Yeah.
And so you could be like, well, I'm going to introduce some, and again, treasures are the strategy of your deck, right? Kind of. A strategy adjacent, I suppose.
Not like so much the like strategy for Korvold is sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. But not so much like a flavor of the deck, right? So you could try to build like Korvold Dragon Tribal, but like then you're not doing the Korvold thing either. So some of these commanders, it is really hard to balance. Though you tried to build a Korvold deck. Have you built it yet? I don't know if you've put it together.
I have a list that is like probably 80 to 90% complete, and I have not put it together yet. It's and I've had to think long and hard about it because I don't know how it finishes the game. And so like my one option is to put like some food combos in it. But yeah, I wanted to. I have Korvold. I like Korvold. I think Korvold's cool. I hate playing Korvold as a like value deck.
Yeah, it's like a sacrifice value deck.
Yeah, and it's so grindy and it takes so much time. So I took that deck apart, but I wanted a food deck. I wanted like a food thematic deck that runs all the food stuff, and I feel like Korvold could be a really cool food commander where like every time I sacrifice a food I get a draw card, and that's like that makes food better because foods aren't particularly good. So I do have like most of a Korvold food deck that I'm trying to make it a different theme than just sacrifice value. And the restriction that I've given myself on that deck is that there is nothing else in the deck that you can sacrifice besides foods.
So that's what I was going to bring up, is because I recall you mentioning that.
Yeah.
And I think it would be easy for someone to ask, well, treasures is the strategy of your deck. Why is foods not the strategy of your deck? But and I guess there's not really like flavor per se with like, oh, foods, like what's the flavor with the commander?
Sure. I mean, with Korvold, the reason I thought of it is like Korvold eats something when he comes in. Like that's his whole shtick, is that he's eating stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, what if he just ate foods? like when he enters, you have foods that he can eat. I don't know.
Yeah.
That might be a stretch. Maybe I just thought Korvold was good and I wanted to play foods.
I think that's fair, but I think it's also fair to say that like rather than some commanders just like aren't naturally flavorful, I guess, is like.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Right? And so you kind of have to.
I don't think Korvold is, and I don't think Pure and Toothy are.
No, and so you do have to, you can, if you want to try to make it more flavorful and bring the power down a little bit while adding some flavor, you can kind of artificially add some flavor to a deck, right? Where with Korvold, the flavor you're adding is like Korvold is eating these foods, and I'm feeding him to make him bigger. I'm drawing cards, but I'm not including all the other stuff that makes Korvold busted, so I can still play it and have it be a reasonable deck. And I think like the other Korvold printing is Korvold Gleeful Glutton. I think there is, there's stuff that's
there's a case to be made for that.
Yeah, there's a case to be made for that. Absolutely, for sure.
I like you named one of the sections in our outline, like adding a box to think outside of it. And I do think that's like one way to make your deck more flavorful. A lot of our community in our Discord talks about like giving themselves restrictions to their deck building to make their decks more interesting or more flavorful. Because while some commanders are like very have natural flavor to them, others require artificially adding flavor, artificial sweeteners.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, they're kind of like bland, which is bad. Like you don't want to call them bland because they're cool. They're like very cool. But in terms of like flavor and like
if you're trying to build a flavorful deck.
Yeah, non-mechanical flavor, right? Some commanders don't have it as much, and so you have to find the flavor. Like I think a really fun one, Tasigur is one of my favorite commanders. I play it in CDH. I've tried to build lower power Tasigur decks, but what I love about Tasigur are the mechanics of Tasigur, and so it's hard for me to try to power him down and still do those mechanics that are actually very powerful, like Neoform and stuff, and delving Tasigur in. But like speaking of foods, I think it could be really fun to do like a food themed Tasigur deck with like bananas, right?
Cool.
Like
because of the art.
Yeah,
that
would be awesome, right? So my current Tasigur build, the way
funny.
I've like imposed theme on it, which like you could argue, well, I think you can make an argument that it's maybe still not very thematic, is that I've tried to make it a flash speed deck where I'm getting value like at just doing things at flash speed, and it turns into more of a Tasigur activation deck, where I still get to do the cool stuff that I want to and delve things away to get Tasigur out. Delve things that I don't want to get back, right? Away to get Tasigur out. I think that play pattern is really cool. But I wanted to play it at lower power, so I made it a flash speed deck. And I think maybe making it a flash speed food deck could help with that.
That would actually be so
because
cool.
then you're sacking the foods at instant speed too, right?
I'll build Korvold food, you build Tasigur food.
Okay,
we'll
perfect.
play them together at the same pod.
the snack boys decks.
Yes, I love it. Snacks and stacks, and
snacks
then
and
stacks. They're just gross stacks decks.
Oh my gosh,
with food
that's
tokens
so
to
funny.
sacrifice.
That would be hilarious. One of the decks actually that I played against recently was from one of our viewers, Faux Pas, shout out in our Discord. I caught a game with him in the Discord with some other people, and he played his Arami of the Dead Tide deck. Let me read Arami really quick. Arami is kind of really cool commander, but not seen, I don't think, very lot. So Arami of the Dead Tide is 1 blue black for a legendary creature Merfolk Wizard that's a 1/4. and you tap Arami to exile cards from your graveyard equal to the number of opponents you have, and then target creature in your graveyard gains Encore until end of turn, and its Encore cost is equal to its mana
that's
cost.
cool.
So it includes a lot of like ETB and LTB effects, right?
Sick.
That
That's awesome.
you get to triple up by casting these things. But his restriction was that it's 3-drop tribal. So it's only
cool.
3 mana value spells in the whole deck.
That's cool.
But but it is really cool. He had a combo that he would find by encoring several things, untapping Arami, encoring several things, and then you get like 3 copies of a drain effect and then 3 copies of another effect, and they start to like ramp
That's
up
cool.
until you can like drain the whole table. It was really cool. So it was like a mid power list that had some cool combos that you could eventually find, but had added this artificial restriction to add some flavor to it, and took his
cool.
mana cost. Said Arami's 3 mana. Let's make the whole thing 3 mana.
That's fun.
Arami
That's
might be a
cool.
woman. I don't know if Arami looks like it could be a woman too. Anyway, pardon if I've misgendered Arami. It's hard to tell. Hard to tell in full armor on a merfolk.
No, that's cool. And so you posed a question, started putting together a list, like how would we add flavor to these commanders? I know you added a few and I added a few. So I'm curious to know what you think for these first couple that you added.
Yeah, so the first one I have here is Muldrotha of the Gravetide. I'll read Muldrotha really quick. Muldrotha of the Gravetide is 3 black, green, blue for a legendary creature elemental avatar, 6/6. During each of your turns, you may play land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. Looking at this art is like so nostalgic for me. It's not even that old of a card, but I started playing in Dominaria. And so this was when it was Muldrotha was originally printed, was in Dominaria. And since I started playing Commander, I've looked on each rec back now, like, you know, several years ago when the top decks had like 2,000 or 3,000 decks, and now they have like, you know, 30, 40 or whatever. But Muldrotha is one of my commanders that I've always wanted to build, but have struggled to build at a lower power because it's so incredibly powerful to be able to recur things from your graveyard over and over again. And I frankly have thought about this, and I don't know what I would do to make this like more flavorful.
I've got an idea.
Tell me.
Because like your initial reaction was to the art, and pulling up the card, that was also one of my initial reactions, because the art is so cool.
Yeah.
And I love Muldrotha as a character. And one of the coolest things about the character design for Muldrotha is the crazy horns / antlers that Muldrotha has.
Yeah.
And so what you could make it an art deck, and all of the art has antlers or horns.
Cool.
Because I just did a quick Skyfall search on cards that have horn in the arts and are Sultai permanents, and they're spicy. Like Bloom Tender has horns. Like Shieldred has horns, Grim Hireling has horns.
That's pretty sick. Yeah, that could be fun. Yeah, it's one that I've always wanted to build, and it's hard. It's one that I'd have to impose like something like that, or have to do like a mana value related thing, or
a partner thing. That's like what you did with Sidisi. You added Umori as a partner to like give yourself a further deck building restriction to make it more flavorful.
Yes, and can I be honest with you? I did enjoy that. I have taken it to like 3 consecutive Commander nights now and never pulled it out.
And never played it. Yeah. So maybe it's not the right one, and that's okay.
So maybe it's not the right one. So I might need to reimagine that one. But yeah, I think to build Muldrotha, I would need to find something like that. And so I'm still trying to figure out. Maybe I would do like a perfectly even distribution of permanents. Or it's like only permanents or something.
So it's like all the same number of like artifacts, enchantments, creatures, like something like that, where it's the same number of each kind.
Or you do something like a winter type deck where like everything has 2 super types.
Cool.
Yeah, which could be kind of a cool thing. And I don't know if that's like a theme per se, but it is a way to, I guess, to introduce theme to the deck.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay,
it's
what
less
about yours?
flavorful, but still thematic.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of mine that I put was and man, maybe my like go-to way to make a deck more flavorful is just to look at the art. But I don't have a bracket 1 deck, and I think it would be a fun exercise for myself to build a bracket 1 deck. And mine the one I'm looking at is Niv Mizzet Supreme, which is a Wooburg commander, 5/5 legendary creature dragon avatar. It has flying hexproof from monocolored, and each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard that's exactly 2 colors has jumpstart. And the reason I like this card is because the showcase printing has the Ravnica frame that has all the buildings, all the little buildings. And I want to build a deck where all of the art has architecture from Ravnica because I really love the architecture from Ravnica. So I think that this would be a cool commander to do that and make it all 2-color, like Spellslinger type stuff with Ravnica art.
That would be so cool.
Because there's a lot of 2-color cards that were from Ravnica, obviously, because that's a major theme. Like the guilds are a major theme, and a lot of them do feature that. So
there have to be so many that have some sort of Ravnica architecture in them, right?
Yeah, there are. It's cool.
That'll be fun. That'll be really cool. It'll be tough to find a combination of those. Like it has art and it has 2-color pips. You know. Well, a friend of ours has built a bunch of Lord of the Rings decks, and they're very solid decks. But for a long time, his restriction was that he was only using cards from those sets.
Sure. Yeah.
Which was really cool. He updated some of the lists, but only using Lord of the Rings cards, so it was still fit inside the world, which was kind of cool.
That's really cool.
The other
Tell us about your next one.
What?
Tell us about your next one.
My next one is a deck that I've already built, Marquesa, Dealer of Death. Marquesa, Dealer of Death. Let me read Marquesa or Marchesa or whatever people want to call it. Don't come at me. Marquesa, Dealer of Death is blue, black, red, so Grixis, for a 3/4 legendary creature human rogue. 3 mana for a 3/4 is awesome. Whenever you commit crime, you may pay 1 mana. If you do, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand and the other into your graveyard. I love this card.
It's so cool. It's so good.
So sick. The problem is the most synergistic way to build this deck is just interaction tribal, right? You just play a bunch of interaction with some value pieces that are going to win you the game, and you just interact with the whole table because every piece of interaction replaces itself, right?
Yeah.
I've been rebuilding this deck because I took it apart and then it sat on my desk for weeks, and I kept seeing my foil Marquesa in its sleeve on top of my deck. And every time I walked by, I thought, that is a cool commander, that is a cool commander, that is a cool commander. And so I'm rebuilding it. And the direction I've decided to go with this rebuild, at least part of the direction I've decided to go, is hand disruption as part of a theme. So because it's a crime. So it's still a crime.
Okay.
And so I'm playing, and not all hand disruption, but like hand looking adding tribal. So I play like Gitaxian Probe, Inquisition of Kozilek, which is you can have someone discard a card from their hand. Thoughtseize, Cruel Claws Heist. Let's see. I'm playing Glasses of Urza, which is a sweet card. It's a 1 mana artifact that you can tap to look at target player's hand. Which is a crime. And so you can tap it, pay him.
Crime pays.
Crime pays. You get information from somebody, and then you get to look at the top 2 cards you like before in your hand. So cool. I'm trading out some of the I'm debating trading out some of the more inherently synergistic pieces. I also traded out some of the worst crimes in the deck because it was still committing crimes, but it wasn't very thematic, and I didn't like some of the crimes I was doing, even though I thought they were fun. And so, yeah, I think that's how I'm going to try to make this one, because crimes is the theme, right? But crimes isn't really a theme because it's like purely synergy with Marquesa,
sure.
Right? So
yeah, so hand disruption, even though like it's still a crime and it's still synergistic, at least narrows the theme, because like counter spells are a crime, like reanimation spells are often a crime. Like there's so many ways you're narrowing the scope of the synergy to try and give it a tighter theme where it's like mostly hand disruption. Yeah,
and I do think it somewhat still benefits with like, because I'm also playing reanimator stuff, and so you get to like hand disrupt, commit a crime, and then maybe you could reanimate something you hand disrupted or something. Cool. So it still synergizes with other pieces of the deck as well. And the goal is to make this one a 3. So it is playing like some game changers. It's still trying to be high power, but I didn't want it to feel like bad. And I do think making this removal or interaction tribal would feel bad.
Yeah. I
So-
think that's probably true. Cool. My what I was gonna talk about. Once again, like it's hard. I think this is very similar to a typal deck, and I wanted to talk about Vihan Goldwaker. I'll read Vihan. I should have had it pulled up beforehand. Mardu, so that's red, white, black for a 3/3 legendary creature, dwarf, warlock. Other outlaws you control have vigilance and haste. And at the beginning of your combat on your turn, you may have treasures you control become 3/3 construct assassin artifact creatures in addition to the other types until the end of turn. And assassins are outlaws, so they would have vigilance and haste.
Yeah, okay.
I think this card is broken in half, to be honest. Like, I think this card is just so crazy.
I think one of your talents is finding commanders that have potentially been overlooked as incredibly powerful options. This one does have a lot of decks on EDH Rec, but it's still not in like the top 10. It's number 11.
For Mardu.
It's close. But like, it is... I remember reading this and being like, oh, that's cool, whatever. And then you explained it to me like 3 days ago, and I was like, oh, that actually is so broken. What the heck?
Yeah.
You get a pitiless plunderer out, and then you attack with all your treasures, and then you sack them to get more treasures.
To replace themselves.
So crazy.
I found out today, I realized that it works with Revel Enriches too. Because Revel Enriches says... that's only when a creature an opponent controls dies, you get a create a treasure. But if they block your creature and their creature dies, then you get a treasure.
Yeah, well, a cool combo we had talked about was Vihan with Pitiless Plunderer and Aggravated Assault.
Oh, yes, because at the beginning of your combat, it turns the treasures back into... And then you can sack
and they
them
gain
to
haste and
pay
vigilance.
for aggravated assault. Yeah, and then you get to just rinse and repeat.
Which is sweet. So you
cool.
sack the ones that are blocked, get additional combats, and then keep going. It's crazy.
So I do eventually want to build this deck because I think it's crazy. And the theme would be treasures, but that's not a good theme. It's too synergistic. Like, it is a theme because everything in the deck's going to have to do with treasures. But I think it's a very similar to like a typal deck where, yeah, sure, the theme is zombie, but it's also super synergistic. Like, Vihan's going to be the same way, I think, and I think that's okay. Like but before I build it, I have not built the deck yet. So as I build the deck, I have to keep that in mind and think this is probably like. It's a strong deck, and I just need to keep that in mind as I'm building it, that I'm building to a stronger power level where it's going to be like high bracket 2 or bracket 3 or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably going to be bracket 3. Is Smothering Tithe a game changer?
Yes.
So that's a card that, like, if you're not playing it in this deck, where are you playing Smothering Tithe? So, like,
right.
I'll build this as a bracket 3 deck and just know that it's pretty strong.
Yeah.
And I'll put in the Pitiless Plunder Aggravated Assault combo because that's cool. And it's very thematic to treasures and what Vihan mechanically wants to do. So I think that's probably one of those examples.
It's so cool. It's so cool that you get to effectively double your treasures every combat with Pitiless Plunder. Yeah, that's a sweet deck. But yeah, I think this is a good along with typal decks that it's a good reminder that synergy and flavor aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, right? Yeah. Aren't really in any way mutually exclusive for the most part,
no.
Especially when it comes to treasures and tribal decks.
Definitely. Yep. Awesome. Well, this was a great discussion. Thanks for chatting with me about this. I hope that anyone listening that you enjoyed this discussion. Maybe it gave you a different way to think about your decks, to assess where they lie on the two scales of flavor and synergy, and maybe that can give you some ideas for deck building, or at least which power level or bracket you should build to.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Join our Discord. We are still trying to get games in there. I haven't for a little bit, but I have. We have a couple times. It's been really fun, and people do get games there all the time. I have a lot of good discussions. Talk about the spoilers. Final Fantasy spoilers are coming up, and everyone's pretty excited about those. Show off some cool cards that you've got. It's just a fun time. So come join us there. Like and subscribe. Share this with your friends. And until next time, remember to always pay to one.